In the glittering heart of Lagos, the name Ifeoma was synonymous with grace and grit. She wasn't born with a silver spoon. She had carved one out of wood and polished it until it shone like a diamond. As the CEO of Pure Life Pharmacies, Ifeoma was a woman who knew the chemical composition of every medicine. But she didn't know the poison that was brewing in her own bridal suit. Today was the day. The hashtag Coffee2026 had been trending on Twitter and Instagram for 48 hours. Outside the Grand Eko Ballroom, the parking lot looked like an international car show. G-Wagons, Range Rovers, and customized Bentleys lined the entrance. The air smelled of expensive Arabian oud and the rich, spicy aroma of party jollof fries that only a five-star caterer can produce. Inside the suite, the chaos was beautiful. Ifeoma, sit still. The lash glue needs to dry. The makeup artist tripped. Ifeoma sat on a velvet stool. Her $5,000 hand-beaded lace gown spread around her like a white cloud. She looked into the mirror and saw a woman who had finally arrived. "You look like a goddess, Ife," a voice whispered. Ifeoma turned and smiled at Cynthia, her chief bridesmaid and best friend since their university days in Nsukka. Cynthia was the one who had held Ifeoma's hair back when she was sick with stress during her first pharmacy launch. She was the one who knew Ifeoma's favorite wine and her deepest fear. Today, Cynthia was a vision in emerald green. She leaned down, adjusting Ifeoma's heavy diamond necklace. "Collins is downstairs, and I hear he's shaking like a leaf. He keeps saying he can't believe a woman like you said yes to a man like him." Ifeoma laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Collins is my peace, Cynthia. After all the struggles, God finally gave me a man who sees me for me, not just for my bank account." Cynthia's smile didn't reach her eyes, but she nodded quickly. "He's a man in a million, truly. And this wedding, people will talk about it for 10 years. The 7-tier cake, the champagne fountain, the gift bags that contain gold-plated watches. Ify, you've outdone yourself." "It's not about the money, see," Ifeoma said, squeezing her friend's hands. "It's about the testimony. I want everyone to see that a girl from a humble home can reach the stars." Just then, the wedding coordinator burst in, holding a walkie-talkie. "The groom is at the altar. The flower girls are in position. It's time, bride." Ifeoma stood up, her heart racing with a mixture of nerves and excitement. She took one last look in the mirror, adjusting her tiara, and grabbed her bouquet of fresh lilies. She didn't know that downstairs, the man she was about to call husband was adjusting his tie and checking his watch, not to see when his bride would arrive, but to see how many hours were left until he could disappear with her life's work. As the violins began to play the first note of perfect, Ifeoma stepped out of her room, her head held high, walking toward a dream that was about to become a nightmare. Imagine the joy in her heart. She thought she was walking toward her forever, not knowing she was walking towards a lion's den. My people, have you ever been so happy that you didn't see the trap being set right in front of you? While Ifeoma was upstairs, being pampered like a queen, the VIP lounge downstairs was a different world. The air conditioning was humid, but the tension between the two people standing in the corner was hotter than the Lagos sun. Cynthia stepped into the lounge, her emerald bridesmaid dress shimmering. She wasn't looking for a bouquet, she was looking for Collins. She found him near the bar, straightening his designer tuxedo jacket, his hands trembling, not from excitement of a groom, but from the nerves of a thief. "Did she suspect anything?" Collins whispered, his voice low and jagged. Cynthia leaned in close, pretending to adjust his boutonniere for the cameras. She smiled a cold, jagged smile. "Ify, suspect? That girl is so blinded by her testimony that she couldn't see a mountain in front of her. She's upstairs thanking God for a man of peace like you. She thinks I'm her sister. Collins took a deep breath, his eyes darting toward the door. The logistics are ready. My cousin is waiting at the back gate with the black SUV. The moment the spraying starts and the gift boxes are full, we move them to the car. By the time the MC calls for the cutting of the cake, we will be halfway to the airport. You see, friends, Collins wasn't the international businessman he claimed to be. His warehouse in Apapa was empty. His bank accounts were frozen and he was drowning in debt from bad gambles. He didn't love Ifeoma. He loved her pharmacy empire. And Cynthia, she didn't love Collins. She hated Ifeoma's success. She was tired of being the best friend who got the hand-me-down bags and the +1 invitations. She wanted to be the one holding the keys. I've already redirected the vendor's final payment to our secret account, Cynthia whispered, her voice full of venom. The caterers, the decorators, the band, none of their checks will clear on Monday. Ifeoma will be left with ₦1 billion debt and a husband who vanished into thin air. Collins grabbed her hand, squeezing it hard. And you are sure about the Dubai visas? Everything is in the bag, Collins, she hissed, pulling away as a photographer walked past. Just play your part. Look at her with those loving eyes. Give her the kiss of Judas at the altar. Once we cross that border, we never have to look back at this grace and great nonsense again. Cynthia walked back toward the bridal suite, her hips swaying, a fake smile plastered on her face. She passed the wedding cake, 7 tiers of white fondant and sugar flowers, and she felt a surge of triumph. To her, this wasn't a wedding. It was a funeral for Ifeoma's reputation. She entered the suite and saw Ifeoma holding a Bible, praying quietly before she walked down the aisle. Cynthia didn't flinch. She didn't feel a pang of guilt. She simply picked up Ifeoma's train and said, "It's time, my sister. Let's go and make history." Oh, my people, can you see the wickedness? A friend who eats from your plate while planning to break the table. Have you ever had a Cynthia in your life? Someone who smiles at your face but sharpens a knife for your back. Tell me in the comments. I'm reading. The bridal suite was finally quiet. The makeup artist had left to set up her station at the reception, and the bridesmaid had gone downstairs to line up for the processional. Ifeoma stood alone, looking at her reflection. She took a deep breath, ready to step out and start her new life. Suddenly, her phone, which had been silent for an hour, vibrated violently on the marble vanity. She picked it up, expecting a congratulatory text from a distant relative. Instead, she saw a message from a restricted number. It was just a video file with a caption, "The piece you are marrying has a hidden war." Ifeoma's brow furrowed. She clicked the play button. The video was grainy, shot from a hidden angle in a dimly lit hotel bar. The very bar at the hotel where they had held the pre-wedding dinner the night before. The camera zoomed in on a corner booth. There sat Collins, his wedding suit jacket draped over the chair, and sitting right next to him, her hand resting intimately on his thigh, was Cynthia. The audio was sharp. Ifeoma's hand began to shake as she heard her best friend's voice. "Collins, relax," Cynthia was saying in the video, her voice dripping with silk. "The gift boxes are made of wood, but the locks are weak. My brother has the master key. While Ife is busy dancing and acting like the pharmacist of the year, we will swap the boxes for the empty ones. By 10 p.m., we'll be at the international wing. Let us stay here and explain to the police why her perfect husband is a ghost." Collins laughed, a cold, heartless sound that Ifeoma didn't recognize. I just need to survive the I do part, see? Every time I kiss her, I'm thinking of the lifestyle we are going to have in Dubai. Her handwork is finally going to pay for our luxury. The video ended. The room felt like it was spinning. Ifeoma dropped the phone on the vanity. The screen cracking slightly. The grace and grit she was famous for seemed to evaporate for a second. She looked at her $5,000 dress and felt like she was wearing a shroud. The man she loved was a vulture. The friend she trusted was a snake. For 2 minutes, Ifeoma sat in total silence. She thought about the millions she had spent on this day. She thought about her mother, who was already seated in the front row, crying tears of joy. She thought about the shame of a cancelled wedding. But then, the grit returned. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't tear her dress. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. Obinna, she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming as cold as ice. I am sending you a file. I don't care how you do it, but I want it integrated into the love story slideshow at the reception. Don't play it during cocktails. Wait for the moment the lights go down for our first dance. I want the world to see the movie they were never supposed to watch. She stood up, wiped a single straight tear from her cheek so as not to ruin her makeup, and strengthened her tiara. She looked at her reflection one last time, not as a bride, but as a woman who was about to go to war. Oh, my brothers and sisters, if it were you, what would you do? Would you run out of the back door? Or would you walk down the aisle knowing you are walking into a trap, just so you can set one of your own? This Ifeoma is not a small girl, I tell you. The heavy oak doors of the cathedral swung open. The organist began the traditional wedding march, and the congregation stood up in a wave of expensive lace and silk. At the end of the long, floral-lined aisle stood Collins. He looked like the perfect groom, wiping a fake tear from his eyes as he watched Ifeoma appear. Beside him stood the best man, and just a few feet away, Cynthia stood tall, her emerald dress glowing, her face fixed in a mask of joyful support. Ifeoma stepped into the red carpet. Her veil was down, hiding the fire in her eyes. Every step she took felt like she was walking on broken glass. Yet she moved with the grace of a queen. As she reached the altar, Collins took her hand. His palm was sweaty. He leaned in and whispered, "You look breathtaking, my love. I can't wait for our life to begin." Ifeoma didn't squeeze back. She looked through the thin lace of her veil at Cynthia, who was busy pretending to fix the bright long train. Cynthia gave a thumbs up and a wink, the secret signal of a sisterhood she had already sold for a plane ticket to Dubai. "Dearly beloved," the priest began, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman." The service felt like it was happening in slow motion. Ifeoma listened to Collins recite his vows. Vows of, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, knowing that every word coming out of his mouth was a lie. He promised to protect her while he was planning to rob her. He promised to cherish her while his mistress was standing 5 feet away holding his getaway keys. When it was Ifeoma's turn, her voice didn't tremble. It was clear, loud and cold. "I, Ifeoma, take you, Collins, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold, until the truth sets us apart." The priest paused for a split second, confused by the slight change in words, but he dismissed it as wedding nerves. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Collins lifted the veil. He leaned in for the kiss that was supposed to seal their union. Ifeoma turned her face slightly so his lips only touched her cheek. To the guest, it looks like a modest African bride being shy. To Ifeoma, it was the touch of a Judas. As they walked out of the church, hand in hand, the bells rang joyfully. People threw flower petals. The paparazzi snapped photos of the happiest couple in Lagos. Cynthia followed closely behind, whispering to Collins as they reached the car. The gift boxes are already being moved to the reception hall. The plan is in motion. Ifeoma sat in the back of the decorated Rolls Royce next to her new husband. She looked out of the window at the streets of Lagos, her mind focused on one thing, the projector at the reception hall. "Are you okay, Ify?" Collins asked, reaching for her hand. "You've been very quiet." Ifeoma turned to him and smiled. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just thinking about the first dance, Collins. It's going to be a night that nobody in this city will ever forget. I promise you that." Chai, my people, did you hear that? Until the truth sets us apart. Ifeoma was giving him a warning, but he was too greedy to listen. Have you ever seen a woman this calm while her world is on fire? This is what we call grit. The Grand Eko Ballroom was a sea of gold and white. Over 500 guests sat at tables decorated with towering crystal centerpieces and imported lilies. The air was thick with the smell of fried snails, grilled fish, and the expensive perfumes of the Lagos elite. At the high table, Collins sat like a king, his chest puffed out, already eyeing the mountain of gift boxes and the heavy money trunk being guarded by his cousins at the corner of the stage. Cynthia was busy, moving from table to table, whispering to the spraying coordinators, making sure the biggest bundles of cash were being directed to the specific boxes they had marked for their getaway. She caught Collins' eyes and gave a small, sharp nod. The plane leaves in 3 hours. The MC grabbed the microphone, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment of romance, the moment of history. Can we please have the lights dimmed? Mr. and Mrs. Collins, please take the floor for your first dance as husband and wife." The massive chandeliers faded into a spot romantic blue glow. The guests pulled out their phones, ready to record the perfect moment. Collins led Ifeoma to the center of the dance floor. He placed his hand on her waist, pulling her close. "I love you, Ify," he whispered into her ear, his breath smelling of the expensive cognac he had been gulping down to steady his nerves. "Everything I did for us." Ifeoma didn't answer. She rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes fixed on the giant LED screen behind the stage. The soft note of a love song began to play, and a slideshow of their pre-wedding photos started. Pictures of them laughing on the beach, holding hands in London, cutting a cake. But then, the music skipped. A harsh, digital scratching sound filled the hall. The romantic photos vanished. Suddenly, the screen turned black, and then a grainy video appeared. It was a hotel bar footage. The volume was turned up to the maximum. "Collins, relax. The gift boxes are made of wood, but the locks are weak." Cynthia's voice rang out, amplified by the ₦1,000,000 sound system. The hall went deadly silent. People stopped chewing. The waiters froze with trays of drinks mid-air. Collins' hands dropped from Ifeoma's waist as if he had touched a hot stove. He looked up at the screen, his face turning the color of old ash. On the screen, the guests watched as Collins kissed Cynthia's hands. They heard him say, "I just need to survive the I do part, see? Her hard work is finally going to pay for our luxury." The video looped. It played again and again. Ifeoma stepped back. away from the man she had married 3 hours ago. She signaled to her brother at the sound booth. The video stopped, and the house lights slammed on, blinding everyone with their brightness. The silence was broken by a piercing scream. It was Ifeoma's mother, who had stood up and grabbed a heavy glass centerpiece, shattering it on the floor. Wickedness! Blood of Jesus! Cynthia! You ate in my house! Cynthia tried to run for the exit, but Ifeoma's younger brother and 3 of his strongest friends were already standing there, their arms crossed. There was no back door. There was no getaway car. There was only the truth. Ifeoma walked to the stage and took the microphone from the trembling MC. She didn't look like a woman whose heart had been broken. She looked like a judge delivering a sentence. "Collins," she said, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "You told me you wanted a wedding that people would talk about for 10 years. Well, look around. You got exactly what you asked for." Now, wow. The embarrassment was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Collins was looking for a hole to swallow him, and Cynthia was shaking like a leaf in the wind. Have you ever seen God catch a thief in the middle of the market? This was more than a wedding. It was a tribunal. The Grand Eko Ballroom was no longer a wedding hall. It was a courtroom. Collins stood in the center of the dance floor, his expensive tuxedo now looking like a prison uniform. He looked at the exit, but his path was blocked by Ifeoma's brothers. He looked at the high table, but his own mother had covered her face in shame, refusing to acknowledge him. Ifeoma stood on the stage, the microphone steady in her hand. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a glass. Her silence was more terrifying than any shout. "Collins," she began, her voice cold and echoing. "You thought you were marrying a woman whose heart was as soft as her lace. You forgot that I am the daughter of a woman who sold bread to send me to school. You thought my hard work was a fruit for you to pluck and eat with your mistress." She turned her gaze to Cynthia, who was cowering near the flower wall. Her emerald dress turned at the shoulder where a relative had tried to grab her. "And you, Cynthia," Ifeoma whispered, "you spent 20 years eating from my plate. I paid your mother's hospital bills. I gave you the capital for your first business, the one you crashed because you were too busy chasing my shadows. You wanted my life. You wanted my husband. Look at him. Take him. He's exactly what you deserve. A man with a hollow heart and a pocket full of debt." Just then, the heavy doors at the back of the hall opened. It wasn't the getaway driver. It was 4 men in dark suits, internal revenue officers and the police. "Collins Okeke," one officer stepped forward. "We have been tracking the import-export account of your company for 6 months. We were waiting for the liquidity you promised your creditors after this wedding. Since the CEO of Pure Life Pharmacies has officially filed a petition for annulment and a freeze on all joint assets due to fraud, you are under arrest." The hall erupted. Collins tried to shout, "Ify, please, I can explain." But the handcuffs clicked shut over his gold watch. As they led him out, he tripped over the long train of Ifeoma's discarded veil, falling into the dust of the floor. Cynthia tried to slip away in the confusion, but Ifeoma called out, "Wait, Cynthia. Don't forget your wedding gift." She signaled to her brother, who handed Cynthia a thick envelope. "Those are the CCTV footage of you stealing from the pharmacy warehouse last month. The police have the originals. Enjoy your flight to the station." The music stopped. The wedding of the century was over. Ifeoma walked to her mother, who was sobbing. She took off her diamond tiara and handed it to her. Mama, don't cry. The trash has been taken out. The house is clean now. She turned to the 500 guests who were still standing in shock. To my friends and family, the party is over. But the celebration of my freedom has just begun. The food is served. Eat, drink, and remember this day. Not as the day Ifeoma was shamed, but as the day the truth set her free. She walked out of the ballroom alone. She didn't wait for a car. She stepped into the Lagos night, the cool air hitting her face. She took off her uncomfortable heels and walked barefoot on the pavement. Behind her, the light of the Eko Ballroom dimmed, but inside her, a new light was rising. My dear friends, what is the lesson here? They say, not all that glitters is gold. And sometimes, the person holding the umbrella for you is the one praying for the rain to drown you. Ifeoma lost a husband, but she saved her soul. What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Would you have finished the dance or would you have stopped the music? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your heart. If you enjoy this true life tale, give it a like, share it with your sisters and brothers, and subscribe to African True Life Tales by Ada. Until I bring you another story that will touch your spirit. Bye-bye.